Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Luana from luanarose.com, a nervous system specialist, and I'm so glad to have you back on my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. Here we talk about all things nervous system health, relationship health, and trauma healing. I very much enjoy reading your comments and interacting with you down below in the comment section, so make sure you comment below if you like what I'm putting down in this video. In today's video, I'm talking about 10 things that everyone should know about healing early or developmental trauma. These 10 things are a culmination of what I wish I knew 10 years ago when I first started healing my early developmental trauma, and they're also informed by what I do for my vocation now, which is helping others do the exact same. So to start off, what is early developmental trauma? I classify it as anything that happened intergenerationally, because studies show that we can have the traumas or experiences manifest in our bodies of up to 3 generations back. And by the time this video comes out, that could have also changed to more generations thanks to science always unfolding and finding out new information. So developmental trauma up to 3 generations back, in utero, extra stress that happened in utero, crappy things that happen at birth, extra stressful birth. For me, I was adopted, so right at birth, I was left alone for a period of time in order for basically political things to happen in regards of legalities. And that's not supposed to happen for a little baby. Sometimes it's being, coming out of the womb backwards, or maybe the cord is wrapped around the baby's neck. These are all classified as early or developmental trauma, stuff that happened pre-verbal. I also include anything that happened up to 5 years old that was stressful, like abandonment. Sometimes divorce can be a trauma, sometimes not, and all the way up until 18 years old when we leave the house. Anything that affects our development as a human, the things that are supposed to happen, the stepping stones that are supposed to happen for a human developmentally in utero to 18 years old, is what I classify as early or developmental trauma. So a lot can happen. A good resource is the ACE studies, which are studies that were originally done at Kaiser Permanente back in the day, and they're still used today. It doesn't cover the whole spectrum, but it does offer a solid view of things like neglect, verbal, physical abuse, sexual abuse, these kinds of things that can fit in the early developmental or childhood trauma category. So I highly suggest checking out the ACE studies if you haven't already. I'll leave a link below for that. So let's get into the first thing that I believe, through my experience, we need to have when we're looking at healing from developmental trauma. And a little disclaimer, most people that I know, and including myself in this, at least 10 years ago, I had no idea that I had experienced early, pre-verbal, for me the most part, developmental trauma. I had no clue. So if you're like, I had a good life, I didn't experience any trauma, I do encourage you to continue watching, because you may discover something new, or you may, resonate with what I'm saying here. So the first one is you will need determination and diligence, especially when it comes to pre-verbal stuff that happened in utero that we don't really have the full story about, stuff that happened pre-verbal in terms of we couldn't talk yet, so there's no story or meaning behind it. Maybe we get to a certain age and we have all these wild symptoms coming up, like vertigo or body pains or fibromyalgia, these kinds of things, and it doesn't really make sense. And we need to have, when we're working at healing this stuff, through what I do, working with different somatic therapies, such as the work of Kathy Kane, the work of Stephen Terrell, and some of Dr. Peter Levine's work, we need diligence and determination, because we're going to feel feels that are hard and intense and scary and crappy, And we need to go through these fields and build our capacity to move through them in order to heal. I always like to think that folks that have experienced early developmental stuff are strong souls, that are souls that have come here and have this tenacity to move through these things if we so choose, because not everyone is here and will heal in this lifetime. So number one is determination and diligence. It takes a long time, most of the time in my experience, to heal from developmental stuff. We need to go slow at our own pace. We can't compare ourselves to others because we don't know other people's history. Everyone has their own unique story, and it's not our right to care about what other people think of us, number one, and it's really not a good use of energy to compare and despair because maybe someone else's healing journey looks different or is going faster than our own. When it comes to healing stuff that happened in the first 3 years of life or even intergenerationally, it does take time. So we need that determination and diligence to keep plodding along and building a new foundation for ourselves, essentially. Number two is you're the hero of your own journey. You are the main character of this movie that you're in. This is so important to remember, that we, as each human, each individual, no matter what you're going through, you are the main character of your story. There's a lot of crappy stuff that happens when it comes to developmental trauma or any trauma, and it can put us in these positions where maybe in the past an individual was a victim of a crime or physical, mental abuse, manipulation. So the experience may have been at one time that the individual was a victim. However, in order to heal and move forward, we need to come out of that. We need to know in our core that you are the hero of your own journey and you're the main character. So it's common, and I see it a lot, of people get to a certain point in their healing and they can't kind of make that transition out of being in a victimhood role or having that kind of mentality and mindset. And I've done another video on this. You can go watch it after. I think it's called How to Heal from Victimhood or something like this. I explain the physiological aspects and how you can do that for yourself. However, if we're watching a movie, we need to put ourselves in that main character role. And it's not uncommon to have to do this many times in our life through different relationships, through maybe different work experiences that you have. You always need to come back and ask yourselves those hard questions. Today, when I wake up in the morning, am I putting myself in the main character role? That doesn't mean you have a perfect day, but it does mean that you have this sense of self-agency and autonomy that you can move through and create the life that you truly want for yourself. Number three, some of your story, some of your symptoms won't make sense. If I know anything about helping people heal from early trauma, it's that sometimes the symptoms, the timing of them, they don't make a whole lot of sense. We're working in the dark, especially when we're working with healing stuff that happened in utero or early developmental stuff. So it's normal to have your experience not make 100% sense all the time. It ebbs and flows, especially if it's pre-verbal. We have this thing called implicit memory that happens before we are able to form thoughts. So, for example, you may be in session. Let's say that you've worked with someone that has done the work of Kathy Kane, Stephen Terrell, Peter Levine, and an emotion comes up. A lot of the times it's sadness or grief. I know I've had this experience a handful of times, and there's just this overwhelming sense of, well, I won't say overwhelming, this whelming sense of despair, sadness, or grief. And there's no story to it. Most of the time for me it happened when things were going great in my life, and I had that capacity to let that old grief from baby times, come on in and move through. So when I say sometimes your experience won't make sense or there won't be a clear story to it, it's because the implicit memory that we have comes before sense making, that part of our brain that makes logical sense of things, the prefrontal cortex. So we have to get comfortable with the unknown, with the uncertainty of, well, this doesn't really make any logical sense. We have to be able to ride that wave. Number 4, highly controversial. It's not about letting go. It's not about letting go. It's about building your regulation, your autonomic nervous system's capacity to regulate itself. So maybe you resonate with this, maybe not. There's so many, spiritual or enlightened and people that have very good intentions that their advice is to just let it go. What happened with mom, dad, that abuser from the past, or maybe from your last relationship, let it go. It's not something that we can physically do. This is my good friend Sage. She has some sage advice of let's go out for a walk now, stop filming. So coming back to letting it go, we cannot let it go. Our memories are stored in our cells. When it comes to healing from early childhood stuff, we need to look at it through the lens of hard, scary things that happen in childhood creates dysregulation at the level of the autonomic nervous system and the rest of the body, the whole stress physiology process. It creates nervous system dysregulation. So we need to look at what creates regulation rather than this whole idea of letting it go, which is very elusive and frankly, in my experience, not effective for most people. We need to learn how to expand your capacity for regulation, for wholeness, for the homeostasis of your body to resemble some sort of health. Because if we have experienced early stuff at a certain age, this is what the ACE studies basically show, is that early trauma takes off 10 to 15 years of our life. So that dysregulation creates sickness eventually. So it's not about letting go, it's about creating more regulation at the level of the body. Number 5, you are already whole and complete. It's not about perfection, it's not about being perfect. A huge part of early trauma is that I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. So I need to work really hard to stay perfect, to stay on top, whether that's if you're an athlete or in your job or in a relationship, of working so hard to maintain connection and maintain the sense of I am good enough. That idea and the sense of lack or unworthiness that I know I've experienced many times, and I'm still working on healing within my own self, my own life, is the essence of that early trauma, that early stuff. It can be as simple as not having attuned caregivers growing up. Nothing absolutely tragic has to happen. It can be as simple as not having emotionally available caregivers in childhood. So you don't have to be perfect, and it's so hard. Any room we walk into, we want to put our best foot forward. We want to look cute. We want to be funny. We want to be accepted. We want to feel like we belong. And it's something that when it comes to healing early stuff, we really need to get good at being comfortable in our own skin and knowing that just because I'm here, I exist, I was born into this world, that indeed you are perfect in every way, whole and complete, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to achieve anything. You're accepted and loved because you exist. So that is a very important one that I think we're all learning until the day we die, really. If you figured it out already, please give me a call. Let me know. Number 6, healing developmental and early trauma is healing relationship and attachment wounds. Ruptures, disruptions or actual abandonment that may have happened in early stages of life all have a direct effect on that person's sense of self. And eventually, if the relationship field maintains this dysregulation or disharmony, it creates sickness, it creates illness. So that mind-body connection is not only to our immediate environment and feeling safe in the cities that we live, in the neighborhoods that we live, if we're living somewhere where we're a minority, or if we're living somewhere where we walk out of the house and everyone's skin tone looks the same as ours or has the same colored eyes. That's the mind-body environment connection on more of a cultural level. It's relational. And if we have ruptures or disharmony or challenges even in our past, that is part of healing the relational and developmental stuff from childhood. Number 7, you don't need to repair with the people that hurt you in the past. Meaning, if someone hurt you, whether it was something they said, bullying, even sexual abuse, you don't need to make amends with that person. Whether it was 5 years ago, 20 years ago, you can still heal from that trauma, or if it was, within the family unit, you can still move forward and feel a sense of belonging and closure, if you will, without going back and making amends with those specific people. This is why, some people have to break up with their family or break up with one individual in their family if they don't see the opportunity to have a harmonious 50-50 unconditional love relationship with that individual. That's from a family role, and I'm someone that completely respects that choice. Not all of us can repair with our family the crappy stuff that happened in the past. I have gone through many phases in my own healing journey where I thought that I'm going to have to break up with my family, or at least in certain regards. I can't have expectations from these people to see me and meet me in the way that I need to be met. But we can choose our family and choose friends or aunties or individuals that represent that mothering or fathering that is whole and helps us feel like we are met, and they can see and sit with all of who we are as a person. So you don't need to make amends and repair with the exact person that rupture or disagreement happened with. Number 8, feeling all the feels is normal. Most of the folks that I work with, including myself, are highly sensitive people. Whether you identify with being a highly sensitive person, or maybe, you are someone that has never heard that term before, and, you're intuitive, empathetic, sense, smells, textures of fabrics can bother you, or you're extra tuned into those nuances of life. This is all normal and a part of being human that we need to learn how to accept this part of ourselves. And if you're someone that is emotional, whether it doesn't matter what gender you identify as, feeling what you feel when you feel it is a normal part of being human. And I'm so grateful for the fact that healing from this early stuff teaches us exactly this, that we can move through anything, any emotion that comes up, the full spectrum. When we have our capacity to move through grief, we're going to have a larger capacity to feel joy and excitement and freedom or liberation. So really, part of healing early childhood trauma is learning how to feel safe enough in our bodies to move through any emotion. Because if we're going to go the gamut and heal this early stuff, we need to learn this skill. And it's absolutely possible for anyone. This is what I teach in my groups, in my one-on-one stuff, because I had to learn myself, and I really do believe that every human is worthy of knowing how to move through high intensity or low intensity emotions. Number 9, We're almost there. Thank you for sticking with me. Number 9 is you can't heal alone. Part of early trauma is this sense that no one was there for me when I needed them the most. I was alone, so I had to figure out how to do things alone. And so we have these people in our world, including myself. I don't identify as being this person anymore, but I used to think that I had to do everything alone because that's all I knew. So there's kind of this culture in our healing world right now which says, oh, I'm a self-healer. I can heal myself. Well, that doesn't actually work because we can't heal attachment wounds by ourselves by reading books about it or knowing our attachment style or these kinds of things. Those are all extremely helpful and great. However, the actual healing and integration needs to happen in a relationship with at least one other safe enough person. In a community, in a class where other like-minded people are around, in a family. It's a ripple effect, and we can't do it alone. It's impossible. And our world needs us to understand this more than ever so we can heal our global attachment wound, if you will. So if you're someone that resonates with going it alone and being able to heal and do this thing alone, I absolutely resonate. And we need to heal together. It doesn't work healing early stuff alone because we need to do something different in order to heal. We can't just keep doing the same pattern. Lastly, number 10 is the Polyvagal Theory, which was developed and research by Dr. Stephen Porges. And the polyvagal theory is basically our sense of safety. How does an individual experience their sense of safety? So we have this thing called neuroception, and our neuroception is basically our cells, our physical being, defining what is safe. And this defining doesn't happen at an upper brain level. It happens at the level of our body, at the level of the autonomic nervous system. This sense of safety that we have is defined by our past experiences. So if you've ever been walking in the woods and there's something on the ground that may resemble a snake, if we're someone that lives in a place where there are snakes, and maybe the snake is actually a stick, I've had this experience, I will look at the thing that resembles a snake that's actually a stick, and I'll have this fear response come up of, oh my goodness, that could be a snake. Let me stop in my tracks and check it out or walk another route. This is my neuroception. It's called part of the polyvagal theory, my sense of safety. So I will have a physical response of fear towards that stick, for this example, because of my past experiences. If it's someone that maybe hasn't grown up in the woods or around potential snakes or sticks, they may just walk past it or not even notice that it's there because their past experiences have defined their current experience of life and what they perceive as safety or what they need to look out for in their environment. There's 3 parts that we really need to know about safety: social engagement, mobilization, and immobility or immobilization. And if we think of our stress response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the fight and flight is part of the mobilization. I need to take action to stay safe. There's this alertness. And the fawn and freeze is part of immobility. So if you've ever experienced being, like stuck, like I just don't want to get up in the morning, I can't go outside. Agoraphobia is kind of an extreme of that. That is part of the immobilization response, a system that is their sense of safety is compromised due to past history, early trauma a lot of the time. So when it comes to the polyvagal theory, Dr. Stephen Porges has broken it down into these 3 kind of categories of being: social engagement, where we want to be most of the time, we feel safe, we can connect, we can bond, form those relationships; immobility; and mobilization. That, my friend, wraps up this video on the 10 things you need to know about healing early trauma. Make sure you comment below and let me know what you thought about this video. Which one out of these 10 things stuck out for you? Could you resonate with all of them? Where you are in your journey, where you are in your path? Did something surprise you? If you want to dive deeper and take action on healing and getting some support around healing early developmental stuff, make sure you take one of my programs. Go on over to luanarose.com. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.